The restaurant buzzed with lively chatter, the aroma of freshly cooked meals filling the air. A man walked in, polished, confident, and unassuming. His presence didn't shout, but it spoke volumes. The manager, stationed at the counter, gave a quick glance and smirked, dismissing him almost immediately. What followed was subtle but telling. A condescending tone, eye rolls, and the kind of customer service that felt more like an insult than assistance. The man, calm and composed, politely placed his order, enduring every slight with quiet grace. But what the manager didn't realize was that this wasn't just any customer. This man was a renowned food critic, someone whose reviews could make or break even the busiest establishments. Little did the manager know, his actions that day would soon unravel a series of events that would shake the restaurant to its core. And the clock was already ticking. The critic quietly observed everything, the decor, the ambience, and most of all, the way he was being treated. He'd been to countless restaurants, both humble and high-end, but this experience felt different. It wasn't just the poor service. It was the attitude, the way the manager's dismissive behavior spread to the rest of the staff. A few tables away, another customer received warm smiles and cheerful conversation. The contrast was striking. The critic's mind raced, wondering if this was a pattern or just an off day for the staff. He mentally noted every detail, from the snide remarks to the manager's loud laughter directed at him, as though his presence was a joke. But instead of reacting, he remained composed, even when his food arrived late and barely warm. He took a deliberate bite, his face unreadable. No one in the room realized a quiet storm was brewing. As the critic continued his meal, the tension in the room grew palpable, at least to him. He noticed how the manager occasionally glanced in his direction, sharing quiet laughs with a couple of employees. The critic wondered if it was his appearance, or perhaps assumptions about him that fueled their behavior. Either way, the lack of professionalism was glaring. Meanwhile, a server hesitated before approaching his table, clearly uneasy. She placed the check down without a word, avoiding eye contact. It was as if they couldn't wait to have him leave. But he wasn't finished, not yet. The critic decided to test the waters, asking a simple question about the dish. The server glanced nervously at the manager, who rolled his eyes before stepping in himself. "It's fine the way it is," the manager snapped, brushing off the inquiry. The critic offered a small smile and thanked him calmly, but inside he knew he had seen enough. The other diners carried on, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface of this unassuming scene. The critic quietly folded the receipt, slipping it into his pocket as he stood to leave. The manager barely glanced up, his smug expression unchanged. A parting sarcastic comment about having a nice day echoed as the critic exited the restaurant, but he didn't look back. Outside, the air was crisp and cool, a sharp contrast to the tension inside. He paused for a moment, taking a deep breath as he glanced at the restaurant sign glowing above him. This place wasn't just an establishment to him anymore. It had become a symbol of something deeper, a lack of respect, professionalism, and fairness. Unbeknownst to the staff, the critic had already begun composing his thoughts during the meal. The notes on his phone were meticulous, detailing everything from the uneven service to the dismissive tone of the manager. This review wouldn't just highlight a bad experience. It would expose the deeper cracks in the restaurant's culture. Inside, the oblivious staff carried on, unaware that their fate was already being sealed. The critic had barely left the restaurant when something caught his eye. A young employee stepping outside for what seemed like a rushed break. She glanced around nervously, clutching her phone tightly. It wasn't the typical demeanor of someone enjoying a breather. Intrigued, he lingered nearby, keeping his distance while pretending to scroll on his phone. The employee, unaware of his presence, began speaking in hushed tones. "I can't take it anymore," she whispered into the phone. "The way they treat people here, it's embarrassing. Customers, staff, everyone. It's not right." Her voice trembled slightly. No one says anything because they're scared of him. The critic's ears perked up. This was bigger than he thought. It wasn't just about his experience. There was something deeper brewing behind the scenes. His review wasn't just about calling out bad service anymore. It could shine a light on the toxicity within. And suddenly, the stakes felt much higher. The critic watched as the young employee ended the call and slipped back inside, her shoulders tense. He now had a clearer picture. This wasn't just a bad night for the restaurant. It was a pattern, a culture built on disrespect and fear, one that extended beyond customers. Later that evening, the critic sat down to write his review, pouring every detail into his piece. He didn't just describe the dismissive service or the mediocre food. He painted a vivid picture of the environment, drawing from his own observations and the overheard conversation. He carefully chose his words, knowing the power they held. This wasn't just about calling out a bad experience. It was about holding the establishment accountable. When the review went live, it spread faster than he expected. Social media buzzed with reactions, customers sharing similar experiences. Ex-employees stepping forward to confirm his observations. The restaurant's management scrambled to control the damage, but the truth had already gone viral. Days later, as the critic walked past the restaurant, he saw the "Closed for renovations" sign on the door. A small smirk crossed his face, but then something caught his eye. A new ownership notice pinned next to it. Beneath the chaos, the story had taken an unexpected turn, offering a second chance to those who deserved better. As the critic stood outside the shuttered restaurant, he felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. His review hadn't just exposed poor service, it had ignited change. Word spread that the former employees, including the young woman he'd seen that night, had banded together to help the new owners rebuild the business with a fresh vision and a commitment to fairness. Weeks later, the restaurant reopened under a new name with an entirely different atmosphere. The critic returned, this time greeted with genuine smiles and attentive service. The food was improved, but more importantly, the energy in the space felt warm and welcoming. It was clear that the toxic culture had been replaced with something much more positive. As he enjoyed his meal, he reflected on how one small moment could ripple into something far bigger. Change, he realized, often starts with calling out what's wrong and leaving room for what's right.